substances can move in and out of cells. But just before I do that, can you tell me what is the similarity between diffusion and osmosis? Because I think I've already said osmosis is really a special type of diffusion. So what's in common between these two things, diffusion and osmosis? Ethan?
They move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration.
Perfect. Okay. The thing which is in common in both of these processes, and sometimes we call them passive transport. The thing which is in common in both of these processes is they are moving stuff from where there is a lot. Somebody like Ethan doesn't use simple terminology like that. He's a good scientist, so he says from a high concentration to where there's less, to a low concentration. Now in osmosis it's the same thing. In osmosis it's always water which is moving. Does anybody know why it's only water which is going to move in osmosis? Jacob?
Because the partially permeable membrane stops the larger things to go through.
Yeah. These solutes, the things which are dissolved in the water, are too big to get through this partially permeable membrane. So it's just water which is moving. But as Ethan says, you've still got water moving from a high concentration. What's the name for that, Ethan? A high concentration of water? Remember Ribena, yeah? I don't like dilute Ribena. So a high concentration of water is going to be dilute. And what do we call this situation here where you don't have much water?
Concentrated.
Yeah. Okay, so a low concentration of water we are going to call concentrated. Now, that is why osmosis is difficult, because that seems weird. Why would I call an area with a low concentration of water, why would I call it concentrated? Because that's the big problem with this topic. That's what people find difficult. Yeah.
Because if it's dilute, then there's a lot of water there. But if there's not much water, is in a low concentration, then there must be a higher concentration of something else, and therefore it's concentrated.
So this, when I say concentrated, you're saying I'm not talking about the water.
I'm talking about whatever else is there.
Right, the stuff dissolved in the water. And what's the technical name for that?
Solid.
Perfect, okay. So high concentration of water, dilute, we should be happy with that idea. Low concentration of water, we call it concentrated because we are talking about the stuff dissolved in the water, the solutes, not the water. When we say concentrated, we mean lots of solute, lots of solute, not lots of water. Okay, brilliant, Ethan, good point there. So osmosis and diffusion are about moving stuff from where there's a lot, where there's a high concentration, to where there's less, where there's a low concentration. Now sometimes we want to do the opposite though. Sometimes we want to move stuff from where there isn't much to where there is a lot. Does anybody know from their general knowledge what that process is called? Charlotte, what do you reckon? Moving stuff from where there isn't much, where there's a low concentration, to where there's more, where there's a high concentration.
I'm not sure.
Well, let's think about it. That is not going to be easy to do. So you're going to have energy to do it, and you're going to have a lot of energy. So what do we call that? I mean, I'm using a lot of energy now. What would you say I am? I'm with an A.
Active.
I'm active. So what type of transport can we call this? Because it's going to need a lot of energy to do this. To move things from where there isn't much to where there's a lot, it's going to take a lot of energy. What are we going to call it?
Activity.
Pardon?
Activity.
Yeah, or how about active transport? Yeah, active transport. Okay, so that's what we're interested in today. Paper 3 topic, active transport. Moving stuff from where there isn't much, where there's a low concentration, to where there is a lot, where there's a high concentration. Right, if we think about a cell which wants to do that, so let's turn this into a cell. I'm going to put a cell membrane around it. What would this cell need a lot of if it's going to do active transport? Seeing as we've just said, active transport requires energy. Think back to your paper 2 knowledge. You know all the components of a cell. This active transport is going to need energy. So what will the cell have a lot of? Matthew?
Mitochondria.
Brilliant. Good answer. Why mitochondria? Talk us through your thinking there.
Well, mitochondria is the site for aerobic respiration, and aerobic respiration releases energy.
Brilliant. Okay, there's a couple of really good things about what Matthew said there. First of all, he said aerobic respiration. So mitochondria is a site for aerobic respiration. What do you mean by that? Is there another type of respiration?
Aerobic respiration uses oxygen,
Yeah.
but you can have anaerobic respiration, which doesn't use oxygen.
Perfect. Okay, and that doesn't happen in the mitochondria. Anaerobic respiration happens in the cytoplasm. Yeah? So one really good thing you said is aerobic respiration happens in the mitochondria. Does anybody else know what I really liked about Matthew's comments? He didn't make a common mistake. He said something really good. I'm paraphrasing you a bit here, Matthew, but I think what you said was the mitochondria do aerobic respiration, and that releases energy. What common mistake did he not fall into? Chloe?
You didn't say producers.
Right, good. Because you know from physics and the law of conservation, you cannot produce energy. You can't destroy it and you can't produce it. So it was good to say release energy. Right, so that's active transport. It's when you move things from a low concentration to a high concentration. You need to know it requires energy. And the mitochondria are going to provide that energy. Does anybody think they know what we would describe this cell as being? Seeing as it's got lots of mitochondria, which makes it really good at doing active transport, we could say the cell is what, Wojciech? Well, you've got a very developed brain, so you're really good at answering questions. Birds have wings, so they're pretty good at flying. What do we call organisms or cells which have special features which help them do their job?
Specialized cells.
Could call them specialised cells, but we wouldn't call that for an organism, like you with your brain or a bird with wings. We'd say the organism is...
Adapted.
Yeah, very good. So the organism is adapted, so is this cell. It's adapted to do active transport because it has lots of mitochondria. Okay, we need to know a specific example for this for our exam. We're going to look at the kidney. Kidney cells do a lot of active transport. But what I want to look at today is plants. So let me draw my plant. Bit of a rush, so it might not be quite to my usual high standards. Usually like to have red petals, but I'm just going to leave it with blue for today. Right, does anybody know what the roots of my plant absorb so that the plant can survive and indeed thrive? What two things do we know roots need to absorb? Maybe. Right, good. Water and nutrients. I'm going to call them mineral ions. So the roots need to absorb water and mineral ions. What process is the plant root going to use to absorb water? Toluda.
Osmosis.
Yeah, really good. Okay, we know water is all about osmosis. If you've got movement of water, it tends to be osmosis. The thing which we're interested in today, though, is the mineral ions. And they're going to have to be absorbed by active transport. I'm going to shoot in and zero in on one of these cells in the roots. So I'm going to actually choose a root hair cell. Root hair cells will absorb water by osmosis, but they will absorb mineral ions by active transport. Now, what does that tell us straight away about the concentration of mineral ions? If the root hair cell needs to do active transport to absorb mineral ions, what does it tell us about the concentration of mineral ions in the soil, in the root hair cell? Tyler.
There's a low concentration of mineral ions in the soil.
Right, good, because active transport is all about moving stuff from a low concentration to a high concentration. So mineral ions need to be in a lower concentration in the soil than they are in the cytoplasm of the cell. I suppose that's strictly speaking. Well, yeah, that's fine, that's the cytoplasm. We've got the cell wall and the cell membrane, and there's the cytoplasm. What can we describe the soil as? The soil's a solution. What type of solution is it going to be? Seeing, Tom, as it doesn't have many mineral ions in it. Right, good. So we've got this dilute solution here, and we're trying to get the mineral ions into the cell. Anybody give me an example of a mineral ion which plants need? A specific example you need to know for the exam. Harry?
I'm not sure, but
What about one which begins with an N?
nitrogen.
It's certainly got nitrogen in. The mineral ion I'm going to be thinking about is nitrates. Okay? Does anybody remember, I think this is paper 2 as well, why do plants need nitrates? Because that's the mineral ion I've drawn on the board, nitrates. Why do plants need to absorb nitrates? Patrick?
Quite sure.
Let me give you a hand then. Remember back in paper 2 we looked at photosynthesis. And photosynthesis makes what type of sugar? Good. So glucose can be made by the plant by photosynthesis. The plant can then absorb nitrates from the water in the soil around it. And do you know what is made when those two are put together? It's sort of the building block of proteins. What's the building block of proteins? What are proteins long chains of?
Amino acids.
Yeah, very good. So the plant needs nitrates to react with its glucose and to make amino acids. And once you've made the amino acids, you can start making proteins. Okay? Right, so that's why plants need nitrates from the soil. Just seeing, let's have a look at a bit of paper 1 actually. Does anybody know where proteins are made? So we talked about mitochondria being the site of aerobic respiration. Where are proteins made? Yeah. Yeah, very good. Well done. So let's add a couple of ribosomes on here as well. Okay, so we've recapped quite a lot of material there. The main thing you need to know, though, is that this is a case of active transport. We're moving mineral ions from where there isn't many, where there's a low concentration, a dilute solution, to where there is a lot inside the cell. Because the cell needs lots and lots of nitrates. It needs lots of nitrates to make lots of protein. Okay, right, really good. Let's just try and summarise the whole thing then. So we have learnt about this sort of passive transport last lesson, diffusion and osmosis. Now we're looking at this new method of moving stuff around, maybe into a cell, active transport. Does anybody want to sum up to me the sort of two big differences between passive processes like diffusion and osmosis and active processes like active transport? What's the two big differences between those two groups of transport? Alex?
The direction in which things move.
Perfect. Can you elaborate on that then? Passive processes move stuff from where to where?
High concentration to a low concentration.
Brilliant. Okay, in diffusion, simple, high to low. In osmosis, we say dilute to concentrated, but concentrated is not much water, so it's actually a low concentration of water. So that's really one good point. Passive processes move stuff from where there's a lot to where there's less. Active processes move stuff from where there's less to where there's more. What's the second big difference? Georgia? Remember, this is an active process. What is active? I'm being active. What do I need a lot of to be active?
Energy.
Good. So, with one difference is this moves stuff from a high to a low concentration. This moves stuff from a low to a high concentration. The other difference is this needs some,
Energy.
and this doesn't need any.
Energy.
Yeah. Okay.